Hello, I'm Nikki Schiller. This is the Iran War Today, our daily briefing bringing you up to date with all you need to know on day 106 of the US-Israel war with Iran. We'll get the latest from our teams who are following the latest developments from Washington in the US and Jerusalem in Israel. Plus, we'll hear analysis from our correspondents monitoring developments from here in London. First, though, let's get some of today's key developments. President Trump says that an agreement between the United States and Iran is scheduled to be signed on Sunday. Pakistan has also said a deal between Iran and the US is closer than ever, but Tehran suggests more time is needed. There are tensions between the US and India over the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. It's unclear if any US deal with Iran would be accepted by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel has continued to carry out airstrikes in southern Lebanon. And Iran's footballers get ready to take on New Zealand at the World Cup in Los Angeles next week. Let's start with the continued diplomatic efforts to get some kind of deal agreed between the US and Iran. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump said the deal is scheduled to get signed tomorrow, and immediately after it is signed, the Hormuz Strait is open to all. Earlier in the day on X, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif, who has mediated talks, also said we are closer to a peace deal than ever before, with finalisation likely expected in the next 24 hours. Pakistan is preparing for the electronic signing of the peace deal immediately after, followed by technical level talks next week. In recent days, there has been growing optimism about the proposed Memorandum of Understanding that could reopen the Strait of Hormuz and begin unfreezing Iranian assets. This afternoon, Iran's foreign ministry said caution was needed and a deal wouldn't be signed tomorrow. Well, these people in Tehran were asked what they thought about an imminent deal.
What is important now is that we're able to advance an agreement in a phased way, not like the previous experience we had with the Iran nuclear deal, to be the side that acts first, and we should be able to step by step impose our demands on the enemy.
We have never broken our commitments. They were the ones who broke them. And it is possible that this could happen again, that the United States could renege on its commitments and its obligations. But if it once again chooses to break its commitments and attack the Islamic Republic, the response of the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will be more decisive.
Well, let's speak now to our correspondent in Washington, Thomas Morgan. So, Thomas, what has President Trump said in this post on Truth Social?
Well, there's a number of things. I think the main key takeaway is that he is also saying that this will be signed tomorrow and it will lead to the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and it will also lead to an end of the US blockade on any Iranian ships. I think what's interesting as well in his post on Truth Social is how much he talks about the nuclear program in Iran. Now, if you remember, this has been such a sticking point for such a long time in all of these talks. What we understood on Friday when the US officials, his government officials, were given a briefing to the press was that there would be now a 60-day negotiation period after this deal is signed. And in that 60 days, they would discuss further what happens to the nuclear deal. But today in this post by Truth Social, Mr. Trump is starting by saying, this agreement is the exact opposite of the one that was had in the past. It will be a wall to no nuclear weapons. In fact, they don't want a nuclear weapon anymore. And at the appropriate time when all is calm, we will go in and get rid of all the nuclear dust, as he calls it, out of the country. I think some commentators may, I guess, argue, how strong a deal is this for the US? Because, as I mentioned, throughout this process, it is the nuclear program and the deterrent or trying to make sure that Iran don't have any nuclear weapons that was at the top of the agenda for the US. But it seems as though that's not part of this Memorandum of Understanding. All that's part of it is the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, the end of the US blockade, continued negotiations about the nuclear program in Iran, but also the kind of step-by-step process of unfreezing Iranian assets and introducing them back into the global economy by easing the restrictions on them. You heard there as well, there's been a number of messages on social media this morning from other international countries, the Iranians also saying it could be signed tomorrow, and also the Pakistanis that have been so key as a mediator in this negotiation between Iran and the US, also saying that a deal would be done in the next 24 hours.
And interesting, if it was done tomorrow, it would be President Trump's birthday tomorrow. How important at the moment politically in the US is it for the president to get this deal done?
Oh, it's hugely important. I think it's not lost on him anymore that this is really not something that the US public ever wanted. I think polls are showing that they've never been interested in this conflict. Obviously, he promised not to bring any more international wars by the US. That has happened, so he wants to bring an end as quick as possible. I think also this week there was a report that inflation was growing at its fastest rate in the US that it has for 3 years. He kind of tried to pour cold water on that a little bit, but I think, you know, as the week has gone on, he has been even more bullish about this agreement being signed, because I think he really wants it to end, because he can see both the public and politically it can't go on indefinitely, and he just wants to come to an end. I think the question, as I mentioned, is how good a deal is this for the US? Who comes out of it better? I think some would argue the Iranians potentially do, because in a way they've got an end to this conflict. The economic situation may improve soon, and also there will be no more fighting. The only sticking point for them is, of course, what's going on between Israel and Hezbollah in South Lebanon at the moment.
Thomas Morgan in Washington, thank you. Well, with me in the studio is Parham Gabadi from BBC Persian. Parham, what are you hearing from the Iranian side about the possibility of this deal being signed tomorrow?
So what we hear from Iranians is a little bit different from the Americans and Pakistanis, because Donald Trump and Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, they both said that tomorrow this document is going to be finalized and digitally signed. Why they're saying digitally? Because I assume that Iranians are going to deprive Donald Trump of a handshake photo op that he really likes. So because on the other hand, Iranian hardliners are really mad at Donald Trump because they're saying that he's the person who assassinated our supreme leader. So I think for political reasons and because of the pressure from hardliners, they want to do it digitally. Regardless of that, it's about the timing. The timing is also very important. Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson, Esmail Baghai, said that refused to say that he declined. He said that it's not tomorrow. We are not traveling to Geneva, and the timing is not tomorrow. He was really cautious to give the exact time and the date of this finalization of this document and this memorandum of understanding. The reason, again, might be because of Iranian hardliners, because since yesterday that they announced that it's close to finally cut a deal with the United States, Iranian hardliners, including Iranian state TV, started attacking and criticizing Iranian politicians harshly.
Now, how crucial in any deal that is signed is the assets that are frozen at the moment? In his post, President Trump says no money will exchange hands. But the Iranians want that money and probably need that money.
That's a great question, because exactly, he said that unlike the Obama deal that was $1.7 billion given in gold cash to Iranians, I am not going to do that and no money is going to be exchanged. However, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said exactly the opposite an hour or two ago. He said that the release of Iranian frozen assets will be an integral part of any agreement. So I'm personally really curious to see who is telling the truth, what is going on, if there is Iranian assets are going to be released or not, because Iranians were really adamant that they were saying that from the $24 billion, half of it at the first stage should be released. The other most important issue is that Iranians again reiterated that their control over the Strait of Hormuz and charging some fees should be added.
And briefly, Parham, do you think this is going to get done tomorrow?
That's really difficult to. I think it might be, because Donald Trump is saying it and Pakistanis are saying it. It might be happening tomorrow. However, Iranians refuse to say it because they don't want the pressure from hardliners.
Parham Gabadi from BBC Persian, thank you. Well, let's speak now to our correspondent in Jerusalem, Charlotte Gallagher. And Charlotte, Israel seems to have been sidelined in all of these talks that have been going on.
They have, Nikki. The talks have been between Iran and the US and mediated by Pakistan, and Israel has had very, very limited involvement. We know Donald Trump spoke to Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, but we don't know the outcome of that conversation. We do know that they've clashed in the past over Israel's military action in southern Lebanon, with Donald Trump saying it was putting diplomacy at risk, really, with Iran. So that's been an issue. I think the fear in Israel is, say this deal is signed, but then say Iran doesn't get rid of its nuclear program and it doesn't stop sponsoring Hezbollah in Lebanon. Where does that leave Israel? Because would Donald Trump restart a really unpopular war? The American public aren't happy with it. It's driven up food prices, gas prices, and in the year of an election, would he really restart a war? Many think perhaps he wouldn't. Also, another person who's facing an election this year is the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. So there's a lot hanging on this at the moment, Nikki. But yet, Israel definitely not in that inner circle of talks at the moment, perhaps feeling a little bit pushed out. And as you said, their military action in Lebanon continues.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because the conflict in Lebanon is going to play a big role in any negotiations. Iran's previously insisted that any deal must include a ceasefire in Lebanon, but those strikes have continued. State media in Lebanon reporting that Israel struck the south of the country shortly after an evacuation order was issued for 20 towns and villages in the area. The Israeli military telling people to leave before it was targeting what it called Hezbollah positions. Hezbollah, of course, Shia Muslim political and military group in Lebanon, which has been involved in a series of violent conflicts with Israel. It's got that strong backing from Iran and opposes Israel's right to exist. The group, considered a terrorist organisation by Israel and many other nations, including the UK and US. So, Charlotte, what is the latest that you're hearing on the ground in Lebanon?
Well, as you said, a number of strikes earlier today. Israel issued an evacuation warning this morning to residents in parts of southern Lebanon in 20 areas, saying to move away from any Hezbollah military infrastructures, any Hezbollah targets, because there was a risk they could be hit by airstrikes. So then the strikes happened. So far, we know at least one person has been killed. Others have been wounded. That, of course, could rise. But it doesn't seem that Israel is showing any sign of giving up that military action in southern Lebanon. They say that Hezbollah is an existential threat to Israel's existence. And while they are there, they are not going to stop fighting them. And they say that Hezbollah is not obeying the ceasefire that was negotiated between Israel and Lebanon. And interestingly, the BBC heard from one of the Hezbollah leaders a couple of weeks ago, and he said, look, that ceasefire, that's between the Lebanese government and Israel. That's not to do with Hezbollah. And I think that's one of the big problems with this story, Nikki, is that Israel is not negotiating with the group it's fighting. It's negotiating with the Lebanese government. It's not negotiating with Hezbollah. And so this military action and the deaths continue. So many people have been displaced inside Lebanon, and thousands of people have been killed.
Charlotte Gallagher in Jerusalem, thank you. Let's turn our attention now to the Strait of Hormuz and tensions between the US and India. The United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio has told his Indian counterpart that any violation of the blockade of Iran will not be tolerated. He also warned against what he called the illicit transport of Iranian oil in the Strait of Hormuz. Mr. Rubio made the comments after the Indian Foreign Minister called him to protest over the killing of 3 Indian seafarers by a US strike on a merchant vessel earlier this week. The US has imposed a naval blockade on Iran since mid-April. Ambrosanda Etharajan is the BBC World Service's global affairs reporter. He gave us this analysis.
You can clearly see how the two sides are offering different versions. On the one side, you have the Indian foreign minister talking with the Rubio, according to the press release issued earlier, to protest over the killing of these 3 Indian seafarers. And these were not Indian ships. They were registered in different countries like Palau. 3 of them were attacked this week. And one, for the first ship on Monday, all the crew members were rescued without any harm. And also the third ship, unfortunately, the second one, 3 Indian seafarers were killed. So this raised a huge amount of anger in India. People were asking how India should react, because 3 of the nationals were killed. And immediately after this incident, India summoned a senior diplomat from the US Embassy in Delhi and lodged a very strong protest. And this followed, this telephone conversation between Mr. Jaishankar and Marco Rubio followed that diplomatic protest. Whereas the US side now clearly saying that any violation of this blockade will not be tolerated, and what they call as illicit trade of Iranian oil also won't be accepted. So many people would see this as US giving a very blunt message. As one Indian former diplomat put it, it was a clear snub, and there was not even a regret over the killing of these 3 Indian seafarers. They were unarmed. They were working for some shipping company registered in different country, but they became the target of this killing. And it also showed how precariously India is placed in terms of walking a diplomatic tightrope, whether managing its energy requirements, at the same time without antagonizing the United States.
Ampersand Etharajan. Well, while diplomatic efforts are taking place about the Iran war and the situation in Lebanon, Iran is getting ready to compete in the World Cup. The players were out training on Friday. Their first match is at 2 a.m. in the morning UK time on Tuesday, which will be 5 in the afternoon local time. They will play New Zealand at the Los Angeles Stadium. The team will fly to LA on Sunday and train in Carson in California that same day. Now, the players don't have permission to stay in the US, so they will have to travel in and out of the country on match days from Mexico. Whether you are joining us on YouTube, TikTok, Sounds, radio or TV, thanks for your time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the Iran War Today.